Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the new movie, Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle has been an interesting character to me since I watched Young Justice, so I was really excited to see how this movie panned out. The synopsis is as follows. Jaime Reyes suddenly finds himself in possession of an ancient relic of alien biotechnology called the Scarab. When the Scarab chooses Jamie to be its symbiotic host, he's bestowed with an incredible suit of armor that's capable of extraordinary and unpredictable powers, forever changing his destiny as he becomes the superhero, Blue Beetle. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. This movie opens with Jaime coming back from college to his family that he soon finds out has been falling apart in a lot of different ways financially while he's been gone. He immediately starts taking accountability for it and helps himself and his sister find a job. During this process, he runs into a woman named Jenny Cord. Jenny is a part of Cord Industries, a very wealthy corporation that's being run by Victoria Cord. A series of things happens. Jenny gives Jaime this box and says don't open it but defend it with your life, but he does open it to find the Scarab that then chooses him as its host. Victoria and co then come after Jaime and his family to try to get their product back. For me, that plot actually played out pretty well. There were a couple moments in the movie that I felt like could have been cut down a little bit of pacing issues, but in and of itself the plot wasn't bad. It was pretty entertaining the whole way through, and it had a solid ending. So for me, plot gets a thumbs up. 2 is family friendliness. Blue Beetle is rated PG-13. This movie has a moderate bit of profanity in it, a handful of sensual/sexual lines, and a lot of action and violence. I don't feel like they went super overboard on anything, so use your discretion, but for me, family friendliness gets a thumbs up. 3 is acting and script. Zola Merduena does a pretty decent job playing Blue Beetle. I will say that there were some scenes where I was like, oh yeah, this is a great actor, and there were other scenes where I was like, okay, he's either overacting or underacting, and I can't tell which it is. It honestly was just from scene to scene, which kind of felt weird. Joe Lopez as Rudy was really fun to watch, and I think he was funny probably 75 to 80% of the time. Bruno Marquezine played Jenny Cord, and I think she did an excellent job and probably had the best performance in this movie. And Damien Alcazar played Alberto Reyes, and I loved his performance in this film as well. In addition to that, there were a couple things in the script that I think are worth noting. 1, most of the humor lands and it's pretty funny. There's also probably about a quarter of this movie that's subbed in Spanish, which was pretty cool. But there was also an undertone for about a quarter of this movie that was abandoned shortly after that had to do with stereotyping rich and culturally insensitive white people. But there were 2 performances in this movie that I really had issue with. Belissa Escobedo, I think, was a detriment to this film. She's just this obnoxious character that you're kind of just like, why is she here? Why was this character written this way? And it was super annoying, more so than it was edgy. And the other performance that took this movie down came from Susan Sarandon. She is a veteran actress. I've seen her in a lot. This was one of the worst acting performances that I have ever seen. Like, it seemed like she just mailed it in and did not care. It was an absolutely terrible acting performance, and there was no redeemable part of it. And it tanked this movie because she is the main antagonist. But when adding all of those things up, it really starts to weigh against this movie, and it definitely was noticeable. So because of all those things, for me, acting and script get a 50-50. 4 is character development. I will say that the family dynamic that was involved in this movie I enjoyed greatly. You get to see the Reyes family come together and have a nice arc themselves, and the idea that love is not a weakness, it's a strength, is a really nice undertone that this movie had. Jaime has decent character building moments between him and his uncle Rudy, and him and Jenny, and him and his father Alberto, and those moments help develop his character and have the audience get a good idea of who Jaime is and what kind of superhero he's going to be. Carapax is antagonist 1.2, and he gets some character development at the end, but I just felt like he wasn't on screen enough for you to care as much about him as you could have, to the point where what happens at the end doesn't hit as hard as it should have. But there were 2 glaring issues with character development. 1 was that of Victoria Cord. If you want to have a good movie, you have to develop your villain, and 1, it didn't help that it was one of the worst acting performances that I've seen in a long time, but 2, there was no development to her character at all. And when you have a really weak antagonist, it definitely puts a damper on the film overall. The second issue, which I think was one of the biggest issues this movie had, was that there was almost no development between Jaime and the scarab Khaji-Da. This movie should have taken notes from movies like Spider-Man No Way Home, or even looking at the relationship between Jarvis and Iron Man, but it didn't. There was almost no relationship at all between Jaime and Khaji-Da. And that was a huge miss, to the point where it affects the character development of Jaime in a huge way, in my opinion. Some things felt really out of place. In some moments he was shy and unsure. In other moments he was super aggressive and confident. And you didn't get to bridge that gap because there was no development. It just wasn't there. And it was super disappointing, and it affected this movie in a huge way. Because you come to the end of the film and you're like, I have no idea who Khaji-Da is, where it came from, what its own motivations are, and actually how it affects Jaime. And on top of the other things, for me, it makes character development get a 50-50. 5 is visuals and CGI. The visuals and CGI in this movie are fantastic. The fight scenes are super entertaining. The creativity involved in some of the superpowers that the Scarab gives Jaime remind me of Green Lantern to a certain extent, but it was just super fun to watch, and I thought they did a great job with it. So for me, visuals and CGI get a thumbs up. And 6 is rewatchability. Blue Beetle is 2 hours and 7 minutes long, and while this movie has slower portions and a couple pacing issues that probably could have been sped up a little bit, it didn't feel that long. A lot of this movie felt semblant of superhero movies of old, where you're truly getting to know the character before they're the superhero, as they become the superhero, and what that would look like moving forward. Now, like I mentioned, it wasn't perfect. There were some huge misses that affected this movie and affected that dynamic, but they did a pretty good job overall with it. So for me, rewatchability gets a thumbs up. With all these areas considered, I have to give Blue Beetle a 6 out of 10. This movie had some terrible acting performances, some annoying characters, some moments of a subpar script, and a complete lack of character building between Jaime and the Scarab. But a lot of this movie was funny. The subtones of family and love being strength were really effective and well told. The visuals and CGI were very entertaining, and when you come to the end of this movie, you feel as though you've watched something semblant of superhero movies of old. So with all that in mind, if you enjoy superhero movies, you might want to go check out Blue Beetle in theaters. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Blue Beetle, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.